Welcome to Real Marketing University with David Collins, a podcast series designed exclusively for real estate agents who are ready to level up their practice and become the go-to neighborhood expert. Today's episode is brought to you by the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing, the premier independent training authority for real estate agents working in the luxury residential market. Go to luxuryhomemarketing.com to learn more, including how you can earn your CLHMS designation, recognized around the globe as the gold standard in luxury designation. Without further ado, here's your host, David Collins.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Real Marketing University. Today we'll be interviewing Lisa Groth out of Phoenix, Arizona. We've referenced some of Lisa's direct mail marketing pieces previously on this podcast, but today we sit down with her for a more in-depth conversation. She started at a price point that was fairly low and has consistently moved up over the years. Let's listen to Lisa talk about doing 42 transactions last year and how she went from living on her mom's couch to owning 4 of her own homes. Welcome, Lisa, and congratulations. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is David Collins, president and founder of Real Marketing. Today we're going to have this series of the Real Marketing University is really a series of 8 different podcasts that are going to hopefully help you understand how to better your career and also get some advice and some suggestions from actual agents from across the U.S. and Canada. And Lisa, this is Lisa Groth here. She works in Phoenix and Scottsdale market. If you have any referrals for that area, she's your go-to gal. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about how you got or why you got into the real estate business in the first place.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was very sweet. Well, let's see. Back in 2009, I found myself as a divorced single mom and was having a very difficult time basically making ends meet. I was working 2 part-time jobs and having trouble affording food and gas. So for me, I woke up one morning. There was, I'd been praying on my hands and knees, just praying to God, just what can I possibly do? I need to feed my children. I woke up in the morning and there was a Groupon for real estate. So I went into real estate sort of not knowing anything about real estate whatsoever. I didn't really even know what a brokerage was. But I aced the test. You know, I fell in love with real estate from start, even at school. I just found it so fascinating. So once I got my license, you know, I joined up with RE/MAX Professionals here in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. And when you start real estate, you sort of get your license and first thought is, okay, now what, right? And everybody kept telling me, you know, only 10% of you are going to make it. Only 10% of you. And I remember being in real estate school thinking, gosh, this is a big commercial. They're already trying to sell me on brokerages. They're already trying to sell me on pins and magnets and pens. And so I met with my broker and he said, you know, there's only one way for you to be successful because you don't have the finances to really start in real estate with anything other than open houses. Those are free. So that's what I did. I thought, you know what? I can outwork anybody. I've got a great work ethic. So my first year, I did 65 open houses. That's in between, you know, soccer and baseball with the kids and going to see their teachers. And also I was still trying to work at a part-time job, just trying to make it work in real estate. So I remember my broker saying, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. So that's what I did. I just did statistically. I thought, okay, if I just meet 20 people at an open house, one of them might like me and might use my services, right? And also when I started, I knew how important it was going to be to sort of be the go-to for information. So every morning I woke up, I never sold a house, but I still woke up every morning, got dressed to go do an open house, looked at all statistics, paid attention to how many houses were on the market at the time, what the inventory was every single day. So by doing this, I ended up selling 12 houses my first year. I was nominated as the Rookie of the Year. And I just remember at the end of that year, I was so proud, you know, I'd really done something and I was really becoming knowledgeable. You know, I memorized that contract forward and backwards. And all I kept thinking is, now how do I ever get better? Because I am spread so thin doing 65 open houses per year. How in the world do I increase my sales? There's no way for me to meet more people in the open house. I'm doing as many open houses as I possibly can. I'm coming into contact with as many people physically as I possibly can. And that's when I realized, there's a ceiling for open houses. And I realized at that time I needed another pillar of to reach people besides just my sphere in the open houses. So that's sort of my introduction and where I ended up in. And then
Thank you.
magically, here I am with all these, trying to figure out what pillar to do next. And the first big mistake that I made, I started investing. I don't know if I'm allowed to say in which pay-per-click I did.
Got it.
Zillow. And I think I spent, $10,000 in 6 months. And I got this many leads. I got zero out of it, nothing. The only thing I got were more sales calls. So at that time, I just was really frustrated because I just kind of felt like I was almost working to the bone. And then magically, my brokerage had a meeting. My broker said, I think you should be at this meeting. And it was David Collins, Real Marketing. So then,
Thank you. Yeah. So tens of thousands of people have heard me tell your story about what happened after we met.
Yes.
Let's hear your side.
Okay. Well, so I just remember I went into this meeting and the first thing I thought was, this is it. That I would love this, right? There were a few other agents that were doing the piece and they all happened to be the top producers in the company. So I knew I needed this piece. And I remember my first objection mentally was I thought, how am I going to afford this piece, right? I got 10,000 going to Zillow. And then this piece at the time, I thought, gosh, that's going to be double that, And I thought, there's just no way. I mean, I talked myself out of it before I even finished the sales meeting, right? Even though I knew I needed it, I'd already talked myself out of it. So after that, my broker, I remember walking by the office, he and David were talking. They invited me in and Nate had said, yep, this is, one of my hardest working agents right now. And I sat down with David and I just said, I don't think I can afford this piece. I just don't think I don't see how I could make the numbers work. And David said, he just looked at me, he said, Lisa, if you do this piece, it will pay for itself. Is that fair? Is it fair if it pays for itself in 1 year and maybe you make a little bit extra money? Would you do it? And I thought, absolutely. And he said, well, you have to commit to 1 year. He's like, he said, your sales, they were really good last year, especially for a brand new agent. You have to commit to 1 year. If you can't commit to 1 year, it's not going to work. If you want to become the dominant agent, you have to commit to 1 year. So I hemmed and hawed David, for another 4 to 6 months, I think. So, because I remember, I think I met you in, I think it was about April of 2015. And I hemmed and hawed and didn't get the piece started until November. So I started in November and I thought, okay, Lisa, you're going to give it 1 year. This doesn't work in 1 year. You're not doing it anymore. And so the very first mailer that went out, I got my first listing within 2 weeks of the first mailer. Got my first sale that paid for the whole piece for the entire year. Canceled my Zillow subscription instantly. And then that year, where I realized I wasn't going to be able to really increase my sales based off of open houses, my sales increased with less open houses by 42%. My very first year, just from the real marketing piece. It was so instrumental in my career and my success. So,
Lisa, how did you pick the neighborhood?
Oh, okay. So again, so this is the first neighborhood I picked. I said, I would like to do the Anthem Country Club. I didn't really know. They have the highest price point. I picked the Anthem Country Club. David said, no, I'm sorry. Our piece is exclusive. There's already an agent in that area, so you cannot go into that area, which I thought, oh, well, that makes sense because if I start marketing somewhere, I don't want somebody else going in there either. So then I thought, okay, Anthem Parkside. And at the time, Alvin, the sales rep, said, and David, they said, I don't think that the turnover really supports that neighborhood. That would have been a more expensive neighborhood for me. But they said, well, what about this other place called Tremonto? Have you looked at Tremonto yet? And I said, I just never really ran the numbers on Tremonto, but I think that if you guys think it will work, let's do this. So they studied the numbers for me statistically. I mean, I was still fairly a new agent. I didn't really even know how to run numbers on a neighborhood. They kept asking me, what's the turnover? And I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean turnover? I don't know what you're saying to me. So I've since learned what turnover is. And actually, it's a key element to the piece, because if you don't have high turnover and you're already going against another dominant agent, you're kind of setting yourself up a little bit for a headache. I mean, you're still going to sell, you're going to more than pay for your advertising, but to really dominate a market, you have to have a few key elements. And one of those elements is a high turnover. And the other one is you can still compete with the dominant agent, but you have to have the high turnover to do that. So obviously Phoenix is in Scottsdale, great market for that. And typically agents don't want to spend the money on mailers. So very few neighborhoods are saturated by a dominant agent with mailers. Mailers are expensive. Not they pay for themselves, but they're still expensive in terms of, it's a lot less expensive to go buy a magnet or a calendar or, something that somebody's going to just throw away.
I think, Lisa, that my experience 30 years of doing this, that a lot of people think that the mailers are expensive, and they also feel like they don't work. And I think that a lot of that is because of the content that's on the mailer. And what you've talked on so much about is the consistency. An agent will mail 3 postcards and think I should get 5 listings. No. Mail 8 postcards, get a listing, and then the next year you may get 5 listings, but not the first one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other thing agents do is they try and cut corners. So, at my own house, I get these pieces of paper that are just basically a Xerox copy or maybe a very teeny tiny just sold. And I see maybe, somebody will sell 1 in a year and then they'll send me a just sold or it just listed. So like you said, I get maybe 2 or 3. They're not high end. There's nothing about them that screams, hey, I would do a really great job representing you on the sale of your home.
That's a really good point. Most agents don't understand that. They think, just get the message out and people will call me, versus what the homeowner is looking at is they're going to assess the quality of the piece and attach that to your ability to market. So if you send me a Xerox copy, I think, this is how this agent markets. And what I always like to say is, you think about the marketing on the most expensive BMW, say $120,000 car, and you look at the brochures, and these people are selling houses, and in your market, it's what, 350,000?
We're up to about 500 now.
I love that. It was 3 when we started, but that was 8 years ago.
Actually, I think it was 275 when we started.
And most people don't think they want to do those type of neighborhoods. But again, the turnover was right. There was no saturation at all in Tremonto, and that was good. What else do you do other than our market report?
Currently, I do open houses.
That's all you need to do.
I know. And it sounds so terrible because people always say, well, what do you do? What do you do? And I say, well, I do the marketing piece. And they say, well, no, what else do you do? And I'm like, I know I should be doing more, but it's so effective. And so the other thing I was going to touch upon, David, is when I was doing my open houses before I had done the mailers, I was out of time. I didn't have any time to do anything, because if I wasn't going to an open house and trying to get in front of people, I was at the soccer game trying to get in front of people. And I didn't have the time to try and, market myself. And I mean, if I ever found the chance, I would try and do a flyer. And then by the time I just got to the point where I was going to go mail it out or do something with it, it was gone already. The amount of time the mailer saves me is invaluable. I mean, it's tremendous.
Sounds like you have more of a life.
Yes, I'm able to actually have friends again and do things that aren't necessarily business related. Whereas before, I mean, it was just constant. I remember an agent in my office, I said, "So what do you do in your spare time?" And he said, "What's spare time? With real estate? You could fill your every second of every single day with real estate related projects."
Most people don't know you're an incredible pickleball player.
Exactly. So after I started doing the mailers, my time freed up quite a bit. And I just thought, what am I going to do with my time? So I did. I started playing pickleball. So it's a very, very terrible addiction.
I played last night, so I understand.
You got it.
So what are some of the most common questions you're asked in a listing presentation? And do you see the mailers on the table when you get them?
Well, it's funny that you said that. I was just going to say that. So when I walk into a listing presentation, I will you can see the mailers that people have kept. And those are the people that they've called. And so I already know when I walk in, they already know I'm going to be able to market their house, right? So at that point, I really have to figure out what's important to them. And I would say they collect my pieces. I'll usually see 2 or 3 pieces. I don't see anybody else's pieces. I only see my pieces. So they really hold on to those. The first question they want to know, do I live in the area and have I sold in the area before?
Neighborhood expert.
Am I the neighborhood expert? Absolutely. So initially, I didn't live in Toronto. I didn't have a house there. So, it was kind of a difficult objection to overcome if you don't live in the neighborhood. So one of the things that I just really focused on is I would say something like, wow, there were, this many sales in your neighborhood this year. And although I don't live here, I specialize here. In fact, and then I just told them everything I know about the neighborhood. So that's one of the things David told me. He said, if you're going to start a piece in Toronto, you need to know this neighborhood. You need to know the demographics. You need to know the schools. You need to know the ratings. You need to know everything there is to know about Toronto. So
I'm glad you took that advice because I was going to touch on it, but now I don't have to. Because people say, what if I haven't ever sold anything? And when the homeowner asks you, 78% of homeowners want to know if you sold something in a neighborhood, and if you did, they'll work with you. But the real question, we think they want to know that you sold something in the neighborhood, and what they really want to know is, can you sell the neighborhood? Rarely does someone pick a house and then a neighborhood. They pick the neighborhood and then say, find me a house within that neighborhood. So by rattling off statistics about even the school, there's like, Susie over at the school board runs the A-rated elementary school here. And, did you know the bridge down in the middle of the complex was designed by so-and-so? And you are phenomenal at statistics. So I think that's a lot of how you got into Toronto early on. But then you moved in, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I sold myself on a neighborhood, so now I've got a couple houses here.
Hold on. I believe when I met you, you were living with your mom.
I did. So through the divorce, I found myself in 2009 with a degree and no job, and I was either overqualified or underqualified for everything. And of the 5 jobs that were available in Phoenix, everybody in 2009 we were decimated, especially my age group. So that was another thing I hear people they talk about, like the differing. You can do that in a seller's market. Oh, you can do that in a buyer's market. Well, we've seen it all, right? But when I started real estate in 2014, it was right after it crashed in 2009, and then it did again in 2013 and 14. Because there was supposedly some shadow inventory the bank was going to release, which never happened. But prices went just as far down as they did in 2009. So there was just a huge amount of inventory. Well, I'm having the same success now where there's almost no inventory not, but than I did before when there was tons of inventory. So the piece will really, what it's going to do is establish you as a neighborhood expert. And that is ultimately what you're trying to do in any neighborhood you're in, no matter what type of marketing you're doing. You are trying to be the go-to person that they call and say, what is my house worth? This is your area.
All right. So what I was getting at was that you 8 years ago lived with your mom and 2 small children. Tell us how many homes you own now.
Lord, I have 4. One,
very, very proud of you.
3 investment properties. Thank you, David. And yeah, it's been, people say, what do you do? What do you do? And I just say, call David. If you really want to make it and you really want to become a neighborhood expert and you really, if you need somebody to trust and get you through to the next level, you need to call David. There's the way to do it. It's not buying paperclip. I've gotten nothing out of paperclip. Everybody I know that does pay-per-clicks, they get so frustrated because they get these half-formed leads. Whereas when you're this neighborhood expert and you know everything there is to know about the neighborhood, and they're calling you because you're the expert, you already have you're so far ahead of the game. You're ahead of all of your competitors at that point, and then you get the chance to shine, because I think that's the biggest thing. We become experts at what we do. My whole goal is to make sellers money. That's make sellers as much money as possible. If I do well with them, then they're going to recommend me, right? But if I have this piece and even if they don't know that person I just sold, they're still getting that same message. They still understand, I'm going to take care of you. Look at how I've taken care of my past clients. Look at these brochures. I'm going to take care of you too. I'm going to do the absolute best job. It's not just me telling somebody. They've already got it in their hands. It's tangible. They already know. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make you as much money as possible. This is your biggest asset, and I'm here to protect it and help you.
All right. So Lisa, in closing, I want to know how many houses you sold last year, and give me one sentence as to some advice for some agents. So how many houses did you sell?
So I sold 42 houses last year. And the biggest thing I would tell new agents is become the expert in your area, and do not fall for all the commercials regarding pins and all these trivial things, then especially pay-per-clicks. Very, very, very difficult unless you're an on the phone salesperson at all times. Very difficult to manage pay-per-click.
I think on the pay-per-click, the statistic is if you don't return that call within 8 to 15 seconds, they're on to somebody else. Lisa, we really, really appreciate your time today, and good luck. Go play some pickleball and sell a couple houses.
Okay, you got it. Thanks so much, David. And thank you for everything you've ever done. You're a blessing.
Thank you. In closing, I just want to do a quick review. Let's think about Lisa, how she started. So I think a couple of quick tips. First of all, she did do 65 open houses in her first year. Not a bad way to get started and meet some people while you're starting your farming. Remember that most homeowners are looking for the neighborhood expert, so become one. Lisa made another couple of really good points about she gets 2 or 3 flyers maybe a month. Inconsistency is the killer. You cannot mail once and make $1 million. More importantly is the quality of the piece. Most people think we just specialize in luxury. And by the way, we do handle a luxury brand for many of the major brands across the US and Canada. But the quality of the piece just needs to be, this is how you're going to market my house. Turnover. So Lisa talked about turnover rate, picking a neighborhood that you are comfortable in. And Lisa didn't talk about this, but Lisa's not comfortable. She's in a $500,000 market now. It was $275,000 when she started. Lisa's not comfortable in $1.5 million neighborhood. And she'll be the first to tell you that. She just not comfortable. And so pick a neighborhood that you're comfortable in. And it's very, very difficult to go from, say, Lisa's $500,000 neighborhood to $1.5 million neighborhood. In future series, we'll talk about how to creep into that, how to get you into the luxury. I do a lot of seminars on how to break into luxury. but you can't go 500 to $1.5 million. You can go 500 to 700 to 900 to $1.1 million to $1.3 million to $1.5 million. And I can show you how to do that. So Ben, again, thank you very, very much for your time today, and can't wait to have future discussions with all of you and hopefully help you make a lot more money in the future.
This has been another episode of the Real Marketing University podcast, bringing you the new real estate success stories each and every month. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in learning more about real marketing, please visit realmarketing4u.com. That's realmarketing4u.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We look forward to helping you on your journey and becoming the local neighborhood expert. Thanks for listening.